God, the confident warrior. God represents another force in the family. He is marked by his warrior-like tendencies, aggressiveness, and confidence. Like all firstborn, he felt the complexity of the painful family situation that reflected on his personality as well. His most noticeable characteristic is that of military confidence. During this time, Leah and Rachel had a competition on who can bear more children for Jacob. Leah was hopelessly in love with Jacob, but he only had eyes for Rachel. But at least Leah had the upper hand at something, and that was birthing children, and she wanted to be the top provider of children for the family. By this time, Judah was the last child she birthed, and we can see maybe she was having a problem conceiving at this point. She saw that Rachel was using other methods of bringing children to this world, using her servant womb. So Leah wanted to do the same. She wanted to make sure that she was the dominant wife. She named her son Gad, as trying to take authority again in her hands. We see Leah aggressively trying to take control of the situation, no matter who gets in her way. We see that this is a dark side of her determination of being the main wife. This determination was passed down to Gad. Sometimes this can have a dark potential to pursue one interest at the expenses of others. For example, after the nation defeated King Sihon and Og, Gad requested to settle in those conquered lands on the east bank of the Jordan. Moses accused the tribe of betraying the nation by claiming the wrong side of the Jordan. Number 32:6. Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here? Why will you turn the minds of the Israelites from crossing into the land that the Lord has given them? And now you, a breed of sinful men, will bring calamity upon all this people. God denied the accusation and offered to lead the nation in battle against Canaan until all tribes were settled. Rather than treachery, God ended up expressing the positive side of aggressiveness, the ability to fight and to lead. The meaning of God is troops or slayer. The warrior has arrived, announced Leah, and he will be the troopers among my sons. God's name was marked as the soldier's son, and this was indeed the task he took upon himself again and again until his action and his name defined him as such. God's future was clearly on the battlefield, and Jacob clearly noted this aspect of his son's name, as his blessing to God was replete with military jargon. Genesis 49:19. God shall be raided by raiders, but he shall raid at their heels. In Jacob's blessing, this is the interpretation that we can conclude. God shall be attacked repeatedly, but in the end you shall triumph. In this sense, the blessing indicates that the descendants of God will lead the ranks of Israel into battle, and they will sure protect the rear when the nation retreated. The interpretation focused on God's fighting spirit. So, there's little text concerning God's life, but in Jewish literature it indicates that God, more than his brothers, hated Joseph. God was a brave shepherd. When the lambs were attacked by wild animals, many of the time he took the predator by one of their legs and swung them over his head and flung them away. He also saved a lamb from the jaws of a bear once, but the lamb was badly injured, and Joseph happened to be walking by and saw this and misunderstood and reported to his father that God has killed one of the flocks to eat, implying that he was careless with his father's animal. We can maybe understand why he had a grudge against Joseph. On his deathbed, God confessed to his children that he had harbored a hatred toward Joseph. Other than this, There was no other explanation regarding Gad's personal life that hinted at the future of his tribe. After the talk with Moses, in which God promised to lead his brothers into battle, the tribe position as a warrior seemed secure. This was their blessing by Moses. Deuteronomy 33:20. And of God he said, Blessed is he who enlarges God. Poised is he like a lion, to tear off arms and scalp. He shows for himself the best. For there is the portion of the reverend Shephtine, where the heads of the people come. He executed the Lord's judgment and his decision for Israel. This blessing was full of promises and wealth and military success, which they all became true. Leah and Jacob invested young Gad with the promise of success in the battle, and Moses added another layer to this gift, praising him for his stamina and fortitude when leading the nations on their conquest. Deuteronomy 33. He executed the Lord's judgment and his decision for Israel. So God stayed true to the words and faithful to the promises to remain across the Jordan until the land was conquered and divided. God had a large land to accommodate their numbers and wealth. God's cities were described as fortified towns. As we can see, Reuben and Gad were two brothers that were linked together. They were placed next to each other in the encampment in the desert. They inherited together on the left side of the Jordan. Gad dwelt with Reuben's very own cities. Many times, Gad was listed first before his older brother, expressing that God took the position of leader before his older brother. We have examples. Numbers 32:2. The Gadites and Reubenites came to Moses. Numbers 32:6. Moses said to the Gadites and Reubenites. Numbers 32:25. The Gadites and Reubenites said. In both Jacob and Moses' final words, the younger brother was praised while the eldest was scorned. Jacob told Reuben that he was unstable as the water, that no longer he shall excel. Moses followed his with the promise of life, but the curse remains standing. Reuben shall live and not die, though he may be few in numbers. God, by contrast, was blessed by Jacob. He shall raid by his enemies' heels, and this blessing is multiplied by Moses. He executed the Lord's judgment and his decision for Israel. Reuben and Gad were linked together in a shared destiny. Both had a significant wealth. Both approached Moses to ask for their land. They were both intertwined, yet their partnership was dominated by one. The reason was because Gad was born after Leah had already won a certain ascendance in the family, and Rachel was jealous of her. Gad for Leah marked a new stage. She was now bold. She was far from the Leah she was when she gave birth to Reuben. Anxious new mother she was, not sure where she stood in the family, but now she was aggressive in her goals and confident. She tricked Jacob to sleep with her servant. She was pursuing new goals, being the main wife with the most kids, and God was the reflection of that mindset in both ruthless and his courage on the battlefield. They were known as the most independent and confident of the tribes. They were a group of determined individuals that had a lot of courage. God was best represented in all his vinous glory through Elijah the prophet. He was from the land of Gilead. So perhaps when Leah named Gad, she dreamed of someone like Elijah, a perfect representation of what someone from God looks like. Outspoken, having a tendency for pursuing a goal aggressively, and super determined. He did not hesitate, ruthlessly express his opinions without pity or compassion. He imposed his will even on Yahweh to achieve his vision. In the end, his fierce behavior and aggressive temperament caused Elijah to separate himself from his people. He became incapable of relating to the nation to whom he spoke, and Yahweh discharged him from his role as a prophet, and also his behavior did earn him eternity and greatness. He rose and stormed to the heavens, and eventually became a source of fortune. In Deuteronomy 33:21, it says, "And he came at the head of the people. He did what it is righteous for the Lord, and what is just for Israel." Elijah's mission during the reigns of King Ahab was to restore Israel to love and worship Yahweh, and to erase the idolatry that was happening with other gods influenced by the monarchy. He was hated and hunted by Ahab and Jezebel. He had to live in hiding. He did not dwell within the nation. He went in and out of civilization, and every time aggressively told the people to change. He was from the other side, the isolated side, Gilead. Yet he led his nation in battle against the worshippers of Baal before retreating. He went to Gilead after the war, as well with his tribe, and then left to heaven. Elijah reflected his tribe in his confident aggressiveness and militant nature. In the biblical text, there's a lot of evidence that there was a strong relationship between Moses and the tribe of Gad. In Deuteronomy 33, it says, "He, God, shows for himself the best, for there is the hidden portion of the lawgiver. He who had led the heads of a nation, he executed the Lord's judgment and his decision for Israel." People argue that Gad and Reuben chose this land solely to have the honor of having Moses' eternal resting place in their soil, because they knew that his body was going to be buried there. Maybe they had a special relationship with Moses. Neither tribe would stand leaving Moses behind, so they claimed the region as their own, to remain permanently bound to him. Interesting fact as well is that Elijah was a prophet from Gad, and Hosea was a prophet from the tribe of Reuben. God was better at recovering quicker than his brother, and seemed to maintain a successful urban structure well into the Israelites' kingdom. He had a stronger tribal identity than his brother. He was exiled along with Reuben and half of the tribe of Manasseh in the days of Tiglath, king of Assyria, 732 BC. During the first wave of conquest, the 2.5 tribes were carried away to Hashlat Harvard, Hara, and the river Gozan, and have been lost to history ever since. The promise of a future glory for the tribe was instructed to its prized son Elijah. Malachi 3. "I will send the prophet Elijah to you before the coming of the awesome, fearful day of the Lord. He shall reconcile parents with children and children with their parents." The tribe of God can no longer be identified with confidence, but his character is manifest in modern-day Israel. Confidence of their military mission, the quality of condition of being strong and in good condition, and being strong to the end. And this is the essence of God.